Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back to another super fun and literally, this is one of my favorite topics this year. Okay, I mean, this year hasn't been that long, but I'm very excited for this one. And I have, as I was told, I haven't had him on. I don't know, apparently since forever, like he told me. It doesn't feel like it though, but then, we talk regularly.
Yeah, we talk a lot, like on a personal level. We're good friends now, but
Yeah.
well, I haven't been on your channel in quite a while. You've been on mine twice since the last time that I've been on
Yes.
yours.
And Dan, tell the people why is Helen so excited about this topic, and what is the topic?
So we're covering the Dark Lord Sauron through the ages, which is a
Yeah,
perfect topic to be discussing at the start of this year, I think.
yeah, and I'm so excited about this mainly because I mean, let's start like that. I do think a lot of people are, yeah, okay. I mean, Sauron is really cool, but what do we actually know about Sauron? Like, what, like, yeah, he's evil. That's
Mm.
it. No, he wants to rule the world. That's it. No, he wants to enslave people and bring them to darkness. No, there's a whole lot more to Sauron. And we'll look at his backstory, his origins, and I will ask the lovely Dan a few very deep and philosophical questions I have here on my paper. I'm very German, sorry. And yeah, I'm really, really excited for this because, spoiler, yeah, there is a lot more to Sauron, especially in the ages before the Third Age. And we won't be talking that much about the Third Age. I think you agree.
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
talk a little. We can talk a little bit, I think, about the sort of symbology that comes into his
Yes.
third age persona, but we don't necessarily describe the events that everybody already
Yes.
knows. I don't think.
Yes. No. And Tolkien tells us a lot more about the Sauron of earlier ages. And so let's start there. So overall, then, I think this
Mm.
is how we mostly start. What is the main thing for you about Sauron? Why did we pick him? Obviously, we picked him for our baddie pick, but
Mhm.
why do you find this character so fascinating? Because I know you do as well, just like me. The more like took a deeper dive into the whole legendarium of Tolkien and not just the three Lord of the Ring books. So what stood out to you?
I think the different motivations that he has from Melkor is
Mhm,
interesting. That's my slant on Sauron, and the
mhm,
first thing that I think about with the character
mhm,
is how different he is to his old boss, who wanted to pervert and destroy things and in a sort of
mhm,
jealous rage. Whereas Sauron wanted to control everything. He was a control freak who wanted to rule,
yes.
as we already said. And he was known as a maker. So his
Mhm,
origin story is that he was originally a vassal of Aule the maker,
Howling.
the
Mhm,
smith,
yeah.
and you see that in his sort of methodology of what he does with the rings.
Mhm.
Um,
But I do find what you said fascinating because I literally took down the exact same notes, and that's what I think as well. I do think Melkor, his former boss, he stands for pure force, pure evil, and he was also the powerful force. And Sauron is more for me what I do think he stands also, yes, for making. And I think the making aspect of it is what got him, how Morgoth got him, because
mm,
this is how Morgoth could convince Sauron to join him. Because they both want to create and not just
yeah,
sub-create, but create on their own. And I do think this is what they really had in common. It's not like, oh yeah, we're evil guys, let's destroy the world. Sauron,
yeah,
I
yeah.
do think, had a very different reason to do this. Like you said, he wanted order, right? He wanted things to be in order, like a good smith. There's a formula to forge a sword and all these things.
There's
And
there's a logic to Sauron where Melkor is more of a kind of a jealous rageaholic.
exactly. But I really do like the idea of both, used jewels. right? And they had jewels. I mean, Morgoth wasn't the one who created the Silmarils, right? But I'm not talking about the Silmarils. I'm talking about Morgoth's ring, because what we learn from Tolkien's extended universe is that the world, Middle Earth, was Morgoth's ring, right? He poured all his evil energy into the whole continent, right, of then Beleriand and whatnot, and created all, the orcs and all the evil forces. And Sauron, in a way, did the same, but he did it the other way around, and he created a tiny object. He put and poured all his energy and all his malice into a tiny ring. And it is like, physics or whatever, or science tells you that then, it's like when you put a glass in front of something and the sun shines through, right? Then the whole energy goes in that place. And this is how I see Sauron's ring. And Morgoth was very different. He poured all his energy all over the country and the lands. And I do think, in a way, and we'll get to that later on, I do think that actually made Sauron more powerful, because he learned from the mistakes of his master, not pouring his energy, in the whole land and wasting his powers, but bringing his powers together in a very tiny, small object.
Yes, and I think as well that he did something very interesting, which is he created the wraiths as well, which is connected with the rings, but he created the wraiths. And what I've said this before on your channel, I think, but my theory with the wraiths is that it was kind of a facsimile or a poor imitation of something similar to what the elves have, where they exist in two worlds at once. So that was where he was trying to imitate the elvish immortality as well. And I think the two concepts are linked.
100%. I really do think that he took a lot from what his, again, former master, kind of invented or tried, and then he kind of perfectioned it, right? Because obviously Morgoth didn't create the elves, but he was there. He sung the elves kind of into being, with his discord as well. So he was part of the whole creation myth, Melkor.
Yeah, well, they all were, weren't they? I mean, it was all one big choir, one big happy family.
Except Melkor. Yeah, but a cool start. And I it's fun that we literally both agree on, yes, they kind of work together, but for me, they are so different. And yes, they're both, the baddies of the story. One, the baddie of the Silmarillion and the earlier ages. And then, Sauron rose in power when Melkor was captured and written out of the picture and was out of this world. And in a way, I really do think he learned from his master's mistakes and tried to, based on his personality, like we just said, he didn't want to destroy, Melkor destroyed the light, the lamps and all that. He always went and destroyed other people's doings and creations, or literally took them. And that's never what Sauron did.
No, I mean, there's a lot of similarities there, of course, as well. I mean, Melkor also was a maker of sorts. He did make things, but he didn't create things. Tolkien made a distinction between those two terms, which is hard to explain. But but Melkor could only
subcreate.
He could pervert things. He could make mockeries of things, but he couldn't create new life in that way.
Well, he would have had the power. He would have had the power to subcreate, not to mock. I mean, his statues as a Valar would give him the power of subcreation, like all the others did. Like they every Valar on their own created things, right? And but he chose to pervert things.
Yeah. And I think the difference is where Sauron is very laser focused on the making of things, I think. And as you said, I think that's how Melkor corrupted him, and that's how he took him to his service, because Aule wasn't giving him everything that he wanted, I guess.
Yeah, but that also shows, you know, in spirit and in mind, he was a bit, and this is his thinking as well. Like Sauron later on can't imagine that people don't want power and dominion over others. This literally brings him down. This is his downfall, that he can't imagine like somebody like Galadriel is not taking the ring, that somebody like Sam is not taking the ring, right? So this refusal of the power aspect is literally his downfall. But what I wanted to talk about and ask you, and ask if you feel the same, I find it fascinating that at first glance, the Silmarillion, but also the Lord of the Rings, is a story about war. And I mean, Tolkien says that. He says in letters, yes, no, that it basically, yes, obviously it's about friendship and redemption and a lot of topics. But if you break it down, it's also a story about war or wars in the Silmarillion. And I find it fascinating that both Melkor and Sauron actually are not warriors. I mean, there's Avala Turkas, right? He is supposed to be. I mean, Melkor was the one who combined all the abilities basically in himself,
Yes.
right? He didn't just stood for one ability. But still, you know, he is sad, like all the stuff he told the Noldor, everything we know about him wanting to create things, stands for somebody like Aule. And I do think he was somebody like a smith, you know. Just imagine, I just wrote a video on the elves, and he taught the Noldor how to create weapons and all that. So that's very smithy, or let's say creator like. And Sauron is the same, but this is a story about wars. And when did Smith and, you know, people who made the gear for war are the actual baddies or the heroes of the story, right?
Have you read Tolkien's thoughts on the people who invented the atom bomb?
I know, I know.
The Manhattan Project.
No, I know.
You'll see the parallels there with Sauron there.
Exactly. And this is, but at first glance, you'd be like, obviously, somebody would be a real warrior, right? Like Sauron's description should be that of a powerful, magnificent warrior. And you get that with Morgoth, for example. You know, when he fights Fingolfin, he literally gets out, you know, has his warhammer Grond. I think it's Grond, right? Yeah. And he kills...
The Hammer of the Underworld.
What a cool name. And yeah, and he kills Fingolfin. And so you get that a little bit, but Sauron so many times, and again we'll get to that later when we go through his life a little bit. Sauron so often doesn't go for the kill. He's actually very strategic. Like, he doesn't go against Ar-Pharazôn's army. He doesn't sometimes, you know, he doesn't go in for the kill. He rather thinks about it first. And it's interesting, and it plays with his character that he's not the warrior in this story, right? Yes, he has, and he commands all these evil armies, but he's not the warrior. He's not somebody like Aragorn, or like he's not equal to that. He has other, but it's that the protagonist is literally a smith in the Lord of the Rings. I find that so fascinating.
Yes, it is.
Not a warlord.
No, well, he is that, but he's not a battlefield general, is he? He's somebody who you know, kind of pulls strings in the background.
Yes.
You see that in the histories. When you look at the histories, when Sauron is disembodied, you see his presence there everywhere in the things that the Witch King does in the Angmar War, which we've talked about before. And he's there pulling the strings, but he's not. I mean, there's one instance of him having a physical fight that we know of, and there's obviously the singing matches that he has in the Quenta Silmarillion.
But it's singing with Luthien, right? And it's not, and he takes the form of a werewolf then later to fight Huan, not in his own form. So it's very, and then he flees, right? He doesn't fight till the end. He literally flees as a bat. So as a vampire.
Yeah, Huan basically kind of has him where he wants him straight away. I mean, he basically runs away straight away. The physical fight I was referring to was the Battle of Last Alliance.
Oh yeah.
I don't really count the werewolf thing as a fight because he basically runs away, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But the Battle of Last Alliance, he loses. So not really a great warrior. He does beat Finrod in his contest of Songs of Power. But,
yes. And you know, he kills him in the tower. Then later on, but that's not really a fair fight because he's chained up. And I mean, I could, yeah, right.
No, it's an execution.
Exactly. So it's you know, like he is portrayed not as a, but then again, we don't have one protagonist on the other side that is purely a warrior. It's not like in the end it's two factions fighting against each other, but we don't really have generals. There is no, it's weird, it's so different than it is very similar to regular warfare, but then it's so different, right? And I love that aspect of it, that he's not just, you know, a baddie who is just up for a fight and literally wastes his armies and his power, but he is very, very clever about this, and it shows especially in the way he doesn't go for the kill and doesn't waste his armies to defeat, because I think he knows he would not be able, the Númenóreans.
Yeah, he's very clever what he does in the Second Age with them. Kind of a tactical surrender, and kind of a behind enemy lines sort of. I don't know the right term to describe it, but yeah, so it's a clever piece of deception that he uses.
Yep. And why do you think so? We do not know, like in the Lord of the Ring books, I mean, it is clear that he is the main protagonist, right? But why do we literally know nothing about him in the actual books? Do you think, is there a reason? Is there a meaning behind it? Should he stay mysterious? Do you have an?
You mean why don't we get his backstory about him being like a servant of Aule originally and all that kind of stuff? Why do we not get all that? I think the Lord of the Rings gives you enough exposition to be going on with already as a first-time reader, doesn't it? So maybe it's just a little bit too much to get everything about the First Age and everything that he did there.
But isn't it always like, because Tolkien knew, I mean, that was the book, you know, after The Hobbit, he published. And I do think, obviously, we know he always wanted to publish the Silmarillion, right? We know that was his dream. But the thing is, and that was the foundation of all of this. But I think after a really long time, he knew that probably won't happen because he was not happy. No, he knew this, it wasn't finished, so he couldn't publish it in his lifetime. And the thing is, why did he never? Because what do we want to know? What do I Google first? I Google first the backstory of the baddie, and I want to know more about the baddie. Why? Oh, sorry, my cats. Just saying, oh my god, that was literally evil. I do think the evil cat literally just attacked. I should name my next cat. Will be named Sauron, or I don't know, Anatar. Tevildo, exactly, Tevildo the cat. Yeah, so where was I? Sorry, before. But did you hear that? That was really...
I heard something. I don't know what I heard.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so why don't we know a lot about, like, what is the reason? Because we want to know more about the baddies. Like, is there... Why did he not give us that?
I mean, I think it's like it's that kind of broad applicability that he was going for, as opposed to allegory. I think maybe if you get too many details, you can read too much into the symbology of the bad guy, of the antagonist of the storyline, and maybe he wanted to avoid that.
Or maybe that we could. I mean, I thought about it, and I see a few reasons, but not that's one reason where I'm like, okay, I would sign my name in blood under that theory. But yeah, the thing is, maybe he didn't want to give evil a face, right? So you can take it as not an allegory, but so you can be like, yeah, it's like in real life, this could be a real story that just happened to me last week or whatever, like mankind. And he didn't want to give it well, he gave him a name and he gave him a face.
He gave him lots of names.
Well, he did that for all the characters, so that's not special. For Sauron was not special. But yeah, no, I think that might be a reason. So he is, many cultures, many different people, many different races, many different, like people on different ages from different worlds could identify or think, oh yeah, that is ours. So I don't know. This is just a thought I had thinking about, but why did he never tell us that much about him? And in a way, I'm sad because I wanted to know more. And this is part of why I love what we got in the earlier ages about Sauron, although it's also not that much. But then we also don't know that much about Morgoth, right? Like what was his favorite color? What did he do? When did he wake up? What like we didn't know that much.
Well, you know what Sauron's favorite color is, because literally everything is black.
Red.
Mordor is the Black Land.
Yeah, but
it's definitely black. I mean, even when it comes to the horses of the Nazgul, we're told that they only steal
black horses.
Only steal black horses from Rohan.
Yeah.
Aomer tells us that, I think.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's not a mystery.
Sauron, I get you.
Everybody looks good in black, don't they?
Oh my god, looking good. Let's talk about, because we were joking about that earlier, because I said, I follow somebody, I assume it's a guy, on Twitter, and his name is Hood Sauron, and that's literally like the best Twitter handle ever. And yeah, Hood Sauron. So let's talk about his origins, because he wasn't just an evil eye, an evil guy. He had a very rich and colorful backstory. And how did he start? Do we maybe want to talk about that for a little bit?
His original name was Myron, which I think means the kind of. Well, yeah, I can't remember the meaning of the name, but it's basically the admirable, I think, something like that. The impressive or the admirable, or I think it's admirable is the usual translation, which is almost a direct kind of antonym for his final name, which is Sauron, which is the abominable. And as we said, he was a disciple of Aule the Smith, which is another name that he takes on later on, actually, when he's in Numenor, is Aulende or Aulendil, isn't it? I think, which is like friend of Aule or disciple of Aule or friend of Aule, I think. But I'm jumping ahead to the second age now. But yeah, he started off as somebody who I don't think was corrupted during the music itself. So for readers of the Silmarillion who are familiar with the Ainulindale, you'll remember a line in there which goes something like, there were those who were corrupted to his service during the music itself. Those are presumably the Balrogs were those spirits. And I don't think that Sauron was necessarily one of those.
Because he
from the way I understand it,
for Aule for a long time, for centuries,
yeah,
and was content and was happy to learn from Aule. Yeah.
So we don't quite know at what point he was perverted into Melkor's service, but at some point he was persuaded, or he was cajoled into the service of the original Dark Lord Melkor, and that was during the kind of the period where Melkor was set up in Utumno, and Sauron had his own fortress, which was Angband. which was set up in the west of Middle Earth as a kind of bulwark against the Valar who were in the west in Valinor. In case of invasion, he was like the first line of defense.
Strategically positioned all the fortresses of evil. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and so that was his origin, basically. And then Utumno was overthrown by the Valar, and there was a big war, and the continent was all thrown into disarray and lots of destruction, and the coastline changed. And Utumno was broken. It was called the Breaking of Utumno, and at that point, Sauron goes missing.
And we know what happened because he actually asked for pardon.
Pardon? Was he pardoned at that point?
No, but he asked for pardon with Eonwe.
No, that was later on. We were talking about this. We were talking about this earlier on. No, I'm talking about after the War of Wrath. That was, yeah.
Yes, yeah. But War of Wrath was when the continent was changed and Melkor was gone.
No, I'm talking about like chapter 1, like early on. Chapter 3, when the breaking of Utumno happens.
Oh, okay. You're the expert. You're going through the Silmarillion. Okay, good. And then what happened?
Well, with Sauron, we don't see him pop up again really in the Silmarillion until the Beren and Luthien story, do we? So he pops up again in the Silmarillion when we get to Beren and Luthien.
Which is First Age, yeah.
Yeah, or actually just before then, we get a mention of him in, I think, the chapter before or the chapter before that in the Silmarillion, where Melkor has invaded most of Beleriand, and Sauron has taken over Tol Sirion, is it called originally? And the fortress there was originally one of Finrod's, wasn't it? And then
Finrod built the tower where he died. Yeah.
Yeah, Finrod built it, and then Finrod moves down to Nargothrond later on and gives that fortress to one of his brothers. I think I don't remember which one, but as the forces of Morgoth come down, whichever brother it was gets kicked out, and Sauron takes over the fortress. The fortress, which was originally called Minas Tirith as well. Yeah. So that was another Minas Tirith.
Yeah.
So the Minas Tirith in Gondor wasn't the original one.
Like so many names and places.
Yeah, reused name, wasn't it? Really.
Yeah, like Denethor. I just found out there was an OG Denethor. Like, okay.
Yeah, the king of the Nandor, wasn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. I had a real hard time finding an image of him actually when I covered that chapter in the Silmarillion Explained series on my channel, because
you always get the guy with a tomato from the like, okay, no, that's not him.
I eventually found a really kind of cartoony looking version of the original Denethor, the Denethor the elf. So somebody out there actually.
Shout out, by the way, to all the amazing art. I really, whenever I'm editing all these videos, I'm like, my God, like, but this has been going on for years, right? It's not like people just started with it. I mean, I don't know, you find art that's like 20 years old or older, where people literally upload all these beautiful Lord of the Ring and Tolkien art, and it's so cool. I even discover, like, on a daily basis when I do videos, I discover new things, and I thought I've seen it all, but no, you always discover new things.
No, I've discovered new bits of lore through the Tolkien art community. Actually, that's true. Nothing's coming to mind at the moment, but there'll be like a title in an art piece that I'll see that will make me think, I've not seen that name before, and then I'll Google a name or something.
No, it's really amazing and talented and very dedicated, because everybody who ever painted anything knows how long that actually takes people. So no, credit and shout out to all the creators of this community. Yeah, but sorry for the interruption. So First Age, and then we get to the mainly I think Beren and Luthien story, right, where he shows up and shows some of his powers we didn't know he had. Because the thing is, what I find fascinating about him is mainly the Maiar, but also the Valar are portrayed as, they have one topic and they're really good at whatever, craftsmanship, at, I don't know, mending trees and nature or whatever it is. And I mean, you could assume, he worked for Aule, he is a good smith and whatnot, but he is well, the shape shifting, I really do think, is a thing of those angelic beings, because they just take this form. It's not like they were born with a body. It's not like the elves, who mainly are spirits.
There are two main divisions of races in Arda, and it's not men and elves. It's incarnates and whatever the opposite of incarnate,
embodiments or something like that.
So an incarnate being is a human, or an elf is somebody with a Heroa. And the Valar and the Maiar, I suppose the opposite is the Aina. The spirits who created the world that aren't tied to one body. They can take on different forms.
But then I find the thing, but let's talk about that later, but try to remember it, because the thing of Sauron losing the ability to shapeshift into a beautiful being, he's then stuck with, whatever he is later on. That I find very weird. Who took that away from him? What, can just be God, right? Nobody else can take that away. How could he lose it? He didn't lose. Did he lose with the drowning of Numenor? Did he lose power? Do you think that? I
don't know if he lost power particularly, but certainly he lost that particular power of changing form. But somebody must at that point. It from him. I mean, his body dies, doesn't it? We're jumping way ahead to the Second Age again, but
I know. Second Age is just the best.
Should we stay with Beren and Luthien?
Yes, sorry. Sorry, I miss chaos, so obviously this happened.
So what happens? So Finrod Felagund is there, supporting his homeboy Beren, son of Barahir, and he's there because he's fulfilling his oath to his father Barahir, and he's there, and he challenges Sauron to a duel of songs of power, and we get a lovely poem in the text of the Silmarillion, which is an excerpt from the Lay of Lathian, which because I've said it before, that I love that poem. And so that's sort of representative of that song of power, which I find super interesting, actually, because we get these two terms for the recital of poetry in its magical sense from Tolkien.
Yes.
And we get two words. We get incantations, which are always evil, and we get enchantments, which are usually good.
Yeah.
And the parallel that I'd like to draw, actually, quickly, is the ring incantation. So the one ring to rule them all, one ring to bind them. That's a magical incantation.
Yes.
So I always wonder whether it's the same sort of magic going on with the ring that created the ring as these songs of power that were sung in the First Age between these powerful beings. I find the interweaving of song in the magical sense of the storyline really, really interesting, as Hax was saying.
Is it a song or was it a verse more? Isn't it more poetry? Because poetry is different than singing. It's another art form.
The ring incantation is more like poetry than singing, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. What's really interesting about the ring incantation as well is that people will know it from the first page of The Lord of the Rings, that it's part of a larger verse about Mordor, where the shadows lie, etc.
Yeah.
And it's in a different meter, which is really cool, because it's the whole verse is like a lore verse from the elves. It's just like this is like their kind of like oral history.
Yeah.
Whereas those two lines are like a direct quote from Sauron, from where Celebrimbor overheard him through whatever means he was able to kind of eavesdrop on the creation of the One Ring. and that was recorded, and that's why those two lines are iambic and the rest of the verse is trochaic.
Yes, and because the rest, that, and because the rest is because the other thing is like Gandalf or somebody retelling the story, right? What you just said.
Yeah, it's a translation from Black speech into Westron, which we don't get it in Westron, we get it in English, but the English is representative of like the common speech, as they call it. But it's an interesting parallel between that magic that goes into making the ring, which I think that incantation is surely key to the magic that created the ring. I
never thought about it, but you're right.
But there is definitely a parallel there between that and the kind of singing that is done in the Beren and Luthien chapter, I think, which I think is also iambic. The excerpt from the Lay of Lathian that we get, I don't actually remember, and I don't have it in front of me, but don't know whether there's any significance to that particularly, but
what mirrors that in a way, and it's not an actual poem or song we get, but do you remember when I think it is Fingolfin and the army, when after they crossed the Helcaraxe and they arrived in Middle Earth, I think they're playing music with the trumpets, and they still have the light of Aman in them, so it's really, really powerful. And we don't get a special verse or anything, but it's literally like them coming, making their stand, making a point like, we're here, Melkor, watch out. This is also like a magic thing, because you feel, I think Melkor knows, oh my God, now the real threat is coming. I mean, yes, Feanor's sons were there, but you never hear the music thingy with Feanor's sons. But Fingolfin literally lands in Middle Earth and plays music. So it's really cool.
I'm going to find the Beren and Luthien chapter and recite that piece of verse for us, actually, because it's cool.
It is really cool.
This, last time I was on your channel, I was also doing reading poetry out, wasn't I? Do you remember?
Yeah, you're very good at that. So I'm just good at, talking in non-Elvish, German, whatever accent, Galadriel. Literally somebody, and I love that, posted under one of my videos, let's recast Helen as Galadriel. And I was like, no,
you're far too short to be Galadriel.
That is true, people. But also, like, hello, I'm an Uldor. First of all, I'm evil, and then I'm definitely an Uldor, like some unknown Noldorian, very short princess.
Maybe you could be like I don't know. Idril, maybe that's the kindest casting I could probably think of. Was she blonde? Okay,
she was blonde. Aredel was dark-haired, and I love, she's Dora the Explorer, as I always say. She's one of my favorite characters. She's so cool. Falls in love with the wrong guy, with the evil elf. Literally, one of the only evil elves in Middle Earth falls for him. Then sees like, oh no, he's actually a baddie. Let's go.
Okay, I've got the verse. I'm going to recite this verse. He chanted a song of wizardry, of piercing, opening, of treachery, revealing, uncovering, betraying. Then sudden Felagund there swaying, sang in answer a song of staying, resisting, battling against power, of secrets kept, strength like a tower, and trust unbroken, freedom, escape, of changing and of shifting shape, of snares eluded, broken traps, the prison opening, the chain that snaps. Backwards and forwards swayed their song, reeling and foundering as ever more strong. The chanting swelled, Felagund fought, and all the magic and might he brought of Elveness into his words. Softly in the gloom they heard the birds singing afar in Nargothrond, the sighing of the sea beyond. Beyond the western world, on sand of pearls in Elven land. Then the gloom gathered, darkness growing, in Valinor the red blood flowing, beside the sea where the Noldor slew the foam riders and stealing drew their white ships with their white sails from lamplit havens. The wind wails, the wolf howls, the ravens flee, the ice mutters in the mouths of the sea, the captives sad in Angband mourn, thunder rumbles, the fires burn, and Finrod fell before the throne.
That's so cool. I mean, come on. It's just so good. This whole story, this whole part of Beren and Luthien is really good.
Yeah. I love Finrod. Finrod's somebody that we need to cover at some point.
We do. He's awesome. Yeah.
Not the wise.
Yeah. No, he's literally one of the best, and we actually know quite a lot of him, and he's because of his line is so important for the first and second age and the ages to come, and it's really good.
But as badass as he is, he does get beaten by Sauron.
Sadly, but it's a really good fight.
It's a good fight, a good sing-songy fight. I'd love to see like that on screen. I'd love to see an adaptation of that and see how they do that, because it's just like it's nearly unfilmable, isn't it? Really.
And talking of art, this is just so good. Like all the art you have there, it's very similar to the Fingolfin Morgoth fight, in a way. Not really, but like an elf, just an immortal elf fighting a Maya, an angelic being, very powerful. No, it's cool. I really like that. Good. So Sauron. I mean, we done. The thing is, yes, he shows that he is beatable and defeatable. Although what I really do think the portrayal is, as soon as he has the ring and figures out how to use it and pour his power into the ring, he gets way more powerful than he was in the first and second age. Also, because Melkor is gone, I really do feel that he then takes over and he uses what is left of Melkor in the land. He kind of uses, because he doesn't have to create this. This is already there. He doesn't have to lose power over, and he doesn't have to lose a sweat over creating all this. It's already there. It was Melkor who left. It wasn't the evil and the malice that left the country. So he was just literally somebody taking on a kingdom that was already in pretty decent shape still.
Sort of, yeah. I mean, he didn't have to create new things. He had like the blueprints of the armies that he, there were most of Morgoth's armies were sort of vanquished at that point. But it's not like they destroyed all of the orcs and all of the monsters. They just
went hiding and
So, and I like to speculate that Sauron was Melkor's creator-in-chief, so I think that he was involved in that process of that evil R&D department, as I've called them in the past.
I think so too.
So I like to think that Sauron was probably chief architect of a lot of these evil creations in the first place.
And towers and fortresses, you feel that this is very Sauron driven as well, because as we said, Morgoth is not a creator. He would just probably be happy in a bat cave or whatever, right? He didn't know. I really think that. Where was he hiding? He was always hiding in the bloody caves. He didn't need a high tower to watch over Middle-earth. He literally never did that. He never even wanted to come out. So Sauron is very different to that.
Yeah. So this is the point at which Sauron does kind of repent. So we're picking up the story again after the end of, as we said before, after the end of the War of Wrath. And Yonway is the herald of Manwë. So he's kind of Sauron's opposite number in a sense, because he's the kind of chief of the forces of the Vanyar and the Valar, who
right hand of the most powerful Valar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Manwë being Melkor's brother as well. He's very much kind of his opposite number, and he's the victorious leader of the forces of good at the end of the great battle.
Yes, and I do think somewhere it is mentioned that Eonwe is the most powerful Maiar.
Yeah, he's the best fighter. I covered this in my first video of my Numenor series recently, which is Eonwe teaches the Edain a lot of new skills and wisdom and things. It's said at the beginning of the Akalabeth, and this is in the period immediately after this incident of him basically convincing Sauron to repent.
Okay.
And then he says to Sauron, "Go before Manwë to be judged. So go and return to Valinor."
Yeah, because he was his equal. You can't be forgiven by an equal.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. He has to come from the top. It has to come from the Elder King, Manwë himself.
Yeah.
And so Sauron says, "Okay, all right then." And then he's like, "Yeah, okay," and then he just disappears. He quietly disappears and never goes back to Valinor and goes into hiding for about 500 years.
Okay, so one question here, a side question on the story itself. Do you think Sauron, and I think somebody even made a video about that. I didn't watch it, I'm sorry. But I think somebody made a video but I always ask myself that, did Sauron know he was on the wrong side of history, that he was evil? Do you, because, well, the thing is, he was very, very clever. We said that, right? And he was not just, brutal force. He was clever. He was like, he thought about things. So asking for forgiveness. I mean, Melkor did that in the Mahanaxar, the first time when he was just chained and in jail for, I don't know, a few centuries, not really long, for the first time. I mean, Melkor asked for forgiveness, and he got it in a way. Did Sauron just, do that, or did he know? Yeah, I'm actually evil, but I try to. I don't think. Do you think he wanted? First of all, was he evil? Did he know he was evil?
Well,
or did he want to redeem himself, or was that a trick? Or is he redeemable? Sorry.
It's difficult to judge any of the Ainur by human standards in a way, isn't it? Because they are aspects of the mind of the creator. I always have this picture in my head of Eru's brain, and it's like a phrenology diagram. You know what phrenology is? It's the sort of medieval pseudoscience of different compartments in the brain, which we know is not how the brain really works now. But I have this picture of Eru's brain, which is like, it's got different kind of like sections, and each Ainur is living in a different part. And clearly Melkor is the amygdala. What I'm saying anyway is he embodies a concept, and he embodies a kind of an aspect of Eru's brain, which isn't really. I do think that. Yeah, I think that each Ainur embodies a different aspect of the mind of the creator. I mean, it says that in the Ainur Lindale.
But then you would say, because okay, Dan, but the Ainur and the Maiar are the personifications of Eru and his thoughts. So that would mean God had evil thoughts. God liked temptation. God liked, because this is now the Christian question. Because then you would say the Christian God, if Tolkien meant that means the Christian God had that already in mind for the humans, for his angels, for whatnot. Or did that just happen because he let everything unfold and then temptation arose, right? That is very different from giving. Is it original sin, or is it, does it come up with living life?
This is philosophical, isn't it?
I know.
It's very deep shit, as you would say.
Fuck yeah.
So, full disclosure, I'm not a Christian. I don't believe what Tolkien believed. I don't know what Tolkien believed about original sin in terms of his Catholic faith. What his answer would be to this question.
Yeah.
And
I don't think he ever fully gave it.
Not in his fiction, he didn't. No.
No.
And if he ever gave an interview about it, I have not read it. Or if he's put it in an essay, then I've not read that either.
Mm-hmm.
As far as Eru Ilúvatar, I mean, I really do think that each Ainur was an aspect of the mind of the creator. I believe that because it says that in the Ainur Lindale. It says that in so many words. And I mean, Melkor, I tend to think, is the jealous aspect of God, and the dark kind of creative edge of that jealous rage. And jealousy, we all know, is a powerful motivator and a powerful emotion. As human beings, we all feel that. And I tend to think, I mean, I'm not a theologian, but I tend to think that human beings are created in the image of the creator in terms of the way that the Christian God is portrayed and that story is told. So I would say that the gods...
They were persuaded the first time humans were persuaded and driven away from paradise was through temptation from something that was not... I mean, yes, I mean, the snake is a being in this world or from this world, but it's different, you know, and it's not good himself. They were not born evil.
We should say, as I mean, I've already said that I'm not a believer. But we're not here to proselytize or say our beliefs in any way.
Like people in the comment section will come at me again and like lecture me, and this is, you know, like I don't know.
Yeah. So what was the question again?
So first question: did he know he was evil? Did he know he was on the wrong side of history? Did
Sauron know that he was on the wrong side of history? Yes. I tend to think no.
I
tend to think he thought that he was entitled to rule, or he was supposed to rule.
Exactly, because I think he felt that the gods and God literally left Middle Earth, and that's what they did. None of them was there. They just didn't care. They went to Valinor and lived in bliss. And they just left Middle Earth. And he was like, okay, then I'm going to take it.
There are definitely big hints of the Valar and by extension, the Ainur as a whole, you know, Manwë and the rest, making huge mistakes, especially Manwë. Manwë, like, definitely makes huge mistakes. And it's because he doesn't understand the nature of evil, which is a point I've made on my channel several times. That he just doesn't understand evil and what it is and because he's from a different aspect of the mind of the creator, an innocence and a purity, and there's that kind of like
this is why he doesn't care for men, because he doesn't understand the concept of men. And this is why he's closest to the elves that are the purest and the most boring ones, the Vanya. But
this is another point as well about men and elves. So men and elves are very different in terms of their... Elves are sort of, in common parlance, are called immortal. Tolkien had another term for them, which I'm forgetting, but it was like serial longevity or something like that he used, which is basically to say that elves did die, but they died at the point at which the universe died. They were tied to the life of Arda.
Bound to, yeah.
Whereas if we look at the Athrobeth, which I've been rereading recently, actually, which is, well, I know that you love the Athrobeth as well. It's a beautiful section of Morgoth's Ring it was published in. And oh my God, the last paragraph of that makes me tear up every time. Which is, it's just to explain to your viewers, is a dialogue and a debate between an elf, Finrod again, actually, and kind of a wise woman of the House of Bael.
I think so.
Who's Andreth, her name is.
Yeah.
And she's in love with Finrod's brother, and that's where the emotional element of the last paragraph comes in, which just makes me cry every time I read it. And the debate, though, is about the nature of men and elves,
and mortality versus immortality, and understanding each other.
And so their preconceptions about their natures, basically, and the differences between them, and Andreth covets that immortality, or she seems to imply that she implies that men believe or have believed for generations that Morgoth did something to them that caused them to be mortal.
Yes.
Whereas Finrod argues that it is just their nature, that they're just basically fulfilling their nature by dying the way that they do.
And so you understand what Númenóreans did so much better, because they didn't accept it as a good given thing. They did believe, Sauron, that when you go to the Undying Lands, you don't die. But that's wrong.
Yeah. I mean, well, they were just stupid, weren't they? I mean, foolish. Let's say foolish. They were fools. Let's not say stupid. Let's not use the word stupid. But
Númenóreans are pretty cool.
So where was I going with all this? So what I was going to say was the point that's made in the Athrabeth is that men are, or if we're to take Finrod at his word, men are visitors in Arda, and that when they die, they go on to elsewhere.
I don't know where.
Yeah. So how does this connect to Sauron? I don't even know where I was going with this.
I don't know. So how did Sauron know? So you say he didn't know he was evil. And I do think we can wind this up with he didn't see this as evil. He wanted, as we said before, he wanted order. And he wanted, like he saw all these, these men and scattered all over the places. And why do you give out rings? To rule over somebody. It's again the order aspect, right? And he didn't see it as, and this is very reminiscent to dictators of our time. Look at what they want to control everything. They want order. The watchful eye is everywhere in China, like this is how these forms of I don't think they see themselves as evil. They see it as order and no chaos, less chaos. And especially men, what do they stand for? They literally stand for chaos. And Morgoth didn't like that. Sauron didn't like that.
Here's a question for you, and this is a curveball, but you talked about the rings and about that how that was kind of an aspect of Sauron's plan that was to do with order and kind of categorizing the different races and having control of different elements of those races. The 3 Elven Rings, as we've said in the past, were made by the elves.
Yeah.
Would Sauron have made rings for them himself, or would he have sponsored the manufacture of rings for the elves that he was involved with? If those hadn't been made independently, what would his plan have been for the elves?
No, I do think he wanted to, with the rings giving out to men and dwarfs, I think he wanted to destroy the elves or drive them out of Middle Earth. I don't think he ever wanted to give them rings, because I think he knew, look, from experience, from the first and second age, he knew he couldn't win against them, really. I mean, against some he could, and some he killed. And in the second age, they were no longer that powerful. The real power players were the Númenóreans, right? I do think that was more of a thinking, the Númenóreans are taking over, what the F? I need to ally myself, and this is where my theory comes back in. He gave the ring to one of the Númenórean kings, whoever, one of the line of kings or prince or whatever you want to say, like he gave that to that line so he could control them with the rings. And I don't think he ever planned to give any ring to any elf, because he could have, the rings were not forged, by the way, people, in like 10 days or something like that. It was ages, years, many years, 100, well, what was it, like 1565 or something, I think, second age they were forged, and he gave them out over also a long time. It's not like he went out and in a week he gave out 9 and 7 rings. That was not how it happened.
But the dwarves were literally, they were spread from one end of the map to the other, so I mean, just to actually travel to them would have taken probably the best part of a decade,
and convince them to take them. And I don't think he just gave them the rings and then ran. I think he stayed there as a shapeshifter, whatever, when he gave Camul the ring, I'm pretty sure he stayed there and like taught him things. This is what he did, like influence people, speak, and then influence them with his words. This is what he did to the Numenoreans, to Ar-Pharazôn. He was there and he got to somebody who was thrown into jail to the advice of the king in like 3 years or something. Like, okay. So I don't think he ever wanted to give out Elven rings. And I think this is why he was so angry when he found out they had rings. Because he would have told Celebrimbor, first thing, also forge some for you. And I think Celebrimbor knew he would never give them the rings. And this is why he forged them.
Makes sense.
What do you think? Well, you seem to have an opinion as well. I just keep blabbering on.
I wonder whether he wanted the 3 rings to exist. Personally, I wonder whether that was part of the plan.
Because he could, if they were wearing them,
because he could control them. That was part of the magic that he taught them. That it was. A ring of power, like that's part of the magic of it. It's bound to that magic, and it's bound to that one ring. And I don't think any of the rings should have ever existed. I think the world would have been better off if nobody had have had any rings in the first place. And this issue of the Elven Rings being made independently from Sauron, I think people make too much of it. I think.
Yeah, and the Elven Ring, it's like I don't know, what Galadriel did, with the ring, preservation and all that was good, but literally when she left, everything died. So it was just good for the time and amount she was there with the ring, but then the world wasn't like it was before. It was actually a little bit, you feel like it was a little bit worse. It would have been better if they would have left the world alone without those rings. But I mean, that was what they did.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the ring, what she does with the ring and what Elrond does with his to a slightly lesser extent is that they
use it less. Yeah.
You get the sense that he doesn't actively wield it as much.
She did.
But what they do with the rings is kind of they use them to preserve, don't they? But it's forestalling the inevitable, which is that the world is becoming more mortal and less immortal.
It's
the years of the sun, and it's natural for things to die and change. And I think it would have been more natural for the elves to have embraced that change and to go west.
I agree fully. But then it's so sad because, I just wrote that video about why did the elves actually awaken Middle-earth and then we're all doomed. But then again, those ones who did awake in Middle-earth, they are not, like the ones who went back, somebody like Galadriel, she was born in Aman. She was not born in Middle-earth. So she always had the feeling, I want to go back home, because her home was Aman. It was never Middle-earth. But then people like Legolas, he was born in Middle-earth. Why does he want to go? Like, why? That's your home. It's
because that's their nature. they are fulfilling their nature in the same way
But
that humans
why?
are fulfilling theirs.
Their home is Quivenen. Why are they not going home to the east, finding their ancestors?
Well, Quivionen's not there anymore, for one thing.
Yeah, but no, yeah, but
It's now Rune, basically. Cats again, or
I don't know, some
you're
weird
looking around.
noises. Whatever. It's really dark, people. So it's like midnight. It's a really weird noise, and I'm home alone. So okay.
I'm 1,000 miles away from you, so I hope nothing happens.
Yeah, sorry, call the German police. No, just kidding. Yeah, so I don't get it. Yes, you can say they're fulfilling their destiny, but they were born. This is their motherland. This is the land they were born in, isn't it? Like,
not their destiny, their nature. So their nature is to go west, and there, because Valinor is removed from the circles of the world, they can live and be preserved there. And
the world is kind of dying, or magic
until the Dagor, of course.
Yeah.
Or they can stay put and diminish and become spirits of the land and fairies and whatever else and become lesser.
I know.
And that is their nature. So it's just who they are.
I know, but like how he portrays all the other stories, like the dwarfs, they are the dwarfs of Erebor. They go and want to reconquer Erebor, their home. The dwarves of and this is the story, right? This is what they want. Aragorn wants to reconquer, like everybody wants to go back to their beginnings and birthplaces and reconquer their and not lose their heritage and everything. And that's not what the elves did. But you're right, it's about their spirits, and they're just not able to be themselves in Middle-earth because magic is leaving, and it's the age of the sun and the age of men is coming, and it's no longer their place. But I find it sad. Anyway, we're not talking about elves here.
It is sad, but it's beautiful as well. It's just there's the beauty in that you can take from it.
I know, but it's a weird happy ending. I'm just a rom-com person who kind of likes other happy endings, especially for my elves. But no, in a way, I get it. It's stupid. I understand it. It's just I find it sad because how he, portrays all the other races and people wanting to go back to their homelands and reconquer their homelands. It's very different. But okay, Sauron. So do you think, was he redeemable? Is there a point where he wasn't redeemable? Was he redeemable? I think more than Morgoth. I think Morgoth, it was literally clear from the beginning that was that he was supposed to be the entity, right? Good, evil. There's no gray with Morgoth. Never was the question. I do strongly believe that.
Yeah, so there's an idea in the Legendarium which is about Arda Mard,
Yes.
which is a term which comes up in the very last paragraph of the Silmarillion in that kind of like
So
epilogue
not tarnished, pure, but yeah.
Which is another concept which will be familiar to Christians, I think, of this idea of a kind of like perfect Garden of Eden like paradise, which is unspoilt by evil, and Melkor being the kind of like fly in the ointment that just screws everything up. So it's very clear that in Arda Unmarred, in the Arda which will exist after the final battle, which you mentioned the dwarves. The dwarves believe that they are there to rebuild Arda after the last battle, which is very wonderfully like Norse and Ragnarokish, I think.
Yeah.
But the in Arda Unmarred, after the resolution and the final battle and the creation of the new Arda, which we don't know how canon that idea is because it seems like Tolkien kind of changed his mind about this. But it's clear that Melkor isn't there. Like, he's no longer about. He's killed by Turin. And he's not a concern anymore.
Justice for Turin.
Sauron, I thought you didn't like Turin.
I don't like him. I
Didn't you?
didn't want to give him the kill. I think that's stupid. Like, give somebody else the kill. Why him? Like, no, don't like that guy.
Because he suffered the most. I think that's the rationale.
No, he shouldn't. It was his choice. He suffered by choice, not by Morgoth's curse. That's ridiculous. It's his bad life choices. So, you know.
You got enough into a fight with Men of the West about this, didn't
Yeah.
you? It's so funny.
I get into a fight with anybody saying that Turin's fate was predestined. No, it's not. Tolkien literally tells us 10 times he could have done it the other way around.
Oh, I agree with you there. Yeah, I agree. But we're not talking about Turin. Sauron
Very long
is he redeemable? You may as well ask: is Darth Vader redeemable?
He is.
You know,
Yeah, show that.
he is redeemed according. I'm talking about Darth Vader here. He is redeemed according to George Lucas, and he's redeemed because at the very last second he decides to throw his boss into a whatever that thing is that he throws him into, that like chasm.
But he's still alive.
But he comes back, and there's a whole abhorrent Disney trilogy where he comes back at the end.
Let's not talk about that.
but where this analogy is like, is he really redeemed? Does that one act, does that make up for all the kids that he murdered and like everything else that he did like throughout the decades that he was evil?
Yeah, he brought he brought the balance back to the galaxy. So he needed to happen. Otherwise, he needed to happen. All this needed to happen, and that's the thing. He was just a check piece into this whole board game. Like needed to happen.
Sauron is not that, is he? I mean, he's never redeemed. We know that. He is his final form is his final form. His final incarnation is destroyed with the destruction of the ring, and his spirit just kind of dissipates and is never able to take form again. So he's not redeemed. Is he redeemable? Is a moral question that you're asking me, which is why I bring up Darth Vader as an analogy, because it's like, it does all the evil outweigh all the good? Is my question.
It's not just that. What is evil? It depends on the point of view. Again.
I'm understanding this as a very I'm being skeptical, as you like to call me skeptical. You called me skeptical a few months back, I remember. And that is who I am. I can't help it. But that's how I look at it. Like, do you weigh the two things up?
Yeah.
All the good that it would take to weigh equal to all the evil that Sauron does. He'd have to literally be the best person ever.
But again, he did all of that out of the idea to create a new world order. I mean, this sounds really bad now, people. I'm not pro dictatorships or anything, but it's not I want to kill everybody and destroy everything like Morgoth did. It was a very different intent he had. So his idea for doing all this was very different. And I do think you at least have to take that into consideration, that it is different than just saying, I want to kill everybody. He wanted to enslave everybody. That is very different, and create his own world. He didn't say,
it's worse in some ways, I would say.
And I also wanted to bring this in. I really do think he didn't want to destroy Numenor. And this is I do think he wanted, obviously, to rule over the Numenorians. This is why he became the advisor to the king. And he never thought the Valar or God would go that far as literally to drown Numenor. I don't think he had that. He didn't know that would happen.
No,
and he didn't want to destroy Numenor. I don't think so. So again, it's very, very different. It's not like, yeah, cool, let's drown the island and kill everybody.
Well, he literally dies as well, doesn't he? His body is destroyed as well. He drowns.
And he didn't want that.
We have to think that was not part of his plan. I mean, he had the kind of contingency of being able to survive that, but you know, he'd already created the ring at that point, so he had that lifeline of being tied to the ring, and it would have been, I think, even without the ring, he wouldn't have been destroyed by that either, because he was an Ainu, he was a Maya, so he would have survived that nonetheless. But yeah, certainly, yeah, he wanted to use, I think, the Númenóreans. I don't know what his like best case scenario would have been for the plan of going to attack Valinor with the great armaments. Just to explain what happens, he convinces R. Pharazôn to basically sail west, which is forbidden, and they create a great navy called the Great Armaments, which I think is a wicked name.
Great Armada, yeah. I do think he wanted to test the waters and see, because he literally people, the Númenórean army was the mightiest thing. There have been many wars in Arda, but nothing like the Númenórean army has ever been seen, and they had better warfare. They literally had machines, they had flying ships, they had spears and arrows that were made of some form of steel. It's very, you know, like Middle Earth was still in the Dark Ages, and Númenor was an industrialized civilization.
Yeah, this is a very medievalist concept of actually things being better back in the day, of things actually diminishing technologically and philosophically and
Aman.
morally.
Yes, and Aman, what was in Aman? Literally, the elves sat there and wrote songs and read poetry. I'm not kidding. This is what was going on there. So,
but there were there were veterans of the War of Wrath there. I mean, if I think if the Númenóreans had have actually been able to, you know,
I think he wanted to test the waters and see what would
make an
happen.
incursion, I think they would have been destroyed utterly.
I think, but he still wanted, you know, he was like, yeah, let's try. Why not? I'm not wasting my army to do it. I'm wasting your army, Ar-Pharazôn. And yeah, as I said, you know, I don't think he had other things in mind for them. He wanted to rule over them. He knew he couldn't with the line of the faithful. This is why I strongly do believe that he influenced the Númenóreans way before he came, what we know of, in the late Second Age, just before the downfall, when he was captured. I'm 100% sure he was in Númenor before and influenced the line of Silmarillion to not inherit the throne and inherit the other line. And he then, from time to time, came back and influenced. He made somebody the Witch King, maybe somebody else, some other Númenórean prince was one of the 9. We don't know. I think that's very, very possible. Or some Númenórean lord, you know. And he was there many times before, and he, you know, he had that plan in mind, and.
Yeah, he probably had a holiday home there in Ravenna, or
and he went there.
He was there all the time.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, again, shapeshifter, he could have gone as whomever he wanted.
At Hot Sauron.
Oh my God, I would have welcomed Hot Sauron, like, come in. This is my home.
So I mean, where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? From Hot Sauron, there's no turning back. No, yeah. So that was the question. So then Númenor drowned. I mean, we talked about the forging of the rings. What I wanted, this is literally one of the 5 bullet points I have here, is that, and we already talked about that. I just want to quote Elrond here, who says, "Nothing is evil from the beginning." Talking about Sauron. And again, this proves this is very different from his former boss from Morgoth. And this is just the aspect where I thought about the redeemable thing, and even Elrond thinking, you know, maybe something can be done, but obviously no. Yeah.
Well, he was called the Myron, the whatever he was. What was the translation for that again? The Admirable. I want to say Admirable. Yeah, the Admirable. Yeah, I'm looking at Tolkien Gateway here, so people
Ooh,
know that.
I mean, please don't copy the copy it.
I'm citing it. I'm citing it. I'm allowed to do that.
I'm just kidding. Because we've been, and not us specifically, but people from this community have been, creators have been called out for copying stuff, and I'm like, yeah, literally, we all recite from the same 5 books, so like, chill. Yes.
Yeah,
Do
so
you
he
have?
was. What I was going to say, he was called the Admirable. So usually names are given to characters and places and people, but it's particularly people for a reason. So presumably he was very admirable in that first era where he was in Valinor working for Aule.
But not only then, even as Anatar, he could, like, get into the minds and probably also hearts of people. I really do think that. Otherwise, the elves wouldn't have trusted him.
Yeah, but what I was getting at is Melkor, when he corrupted him originally, he probably targeted him because he was the best and brightest of the Ainur, and he was a tempting target. It fits the MO, doesn't it? Because we get kind of other instances of Melkor corrupting, the best and brightest, and then Sauron himself kind of fits that same mold because he goes after the best and brightest when he gives the rings to the Númenóreans, for instance, or he gives the rings to the lords of
You're
men,
right.
the lords and kings of men, and the kings of the dwarves, and etc. He always wants to corrupt the best people, and that was the point I wanted to make.
Well, because he knew how powerful the force of the good, or however you want to call it, from his point of view, they were not the force of the good, but you know what I mean, how powerful they were. And so obviously you need, like, double up, because the casual orc wouldn't help him.
No.
Shag that. Yeah. Do we have more thoughts about? Again, I don't think we really have to talk about the third age. The only thing I really want to mention again, and I mentioned it in the beginning of this video, it is so interesting how he never thought of somebody being able to withstand the temptation of the ring, because this is why he created the ring and the rings, right? And he never thought, and this is very similar to Mandos not getting that Melkor was evil. He couldn't understand that his brother,
You mean Manwë? Yeah.
that Manwë never understood that Melkor is evil. Like, he was like, but he's my brother. How can he be evil?
Yeah.
And this is literally the same. In a way, it is very similar that Sauron never understood how Galadriel could refuse the ring. And he wasn't there, but the concept of Frodo, well, in the end, Frodo literally wanted the ring, but Sam and all these other people, even Aragorn, like, he never tried to kill Frodo and take the ring. And he would have been the one who could have used it, like the best. And he never understood that. And he was said to be so clever, but that was his weak point.
Yeah, there was a lack of imagination there, wasn't there?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, think about the Council of Elrond, right? There's a point in the Council of Elrond at which Gandalf kind of plainly says to the council, right now, at this very moment, Sauron is thinking about all of us here having the ring.
Yeah.
He's thinking about us while we're thinking about him. And he knows that we have it because the ring wraiths probably have already got word back to him. And his latest intelligence is that we have the ring.
Yeah.
And at that point, the last thing he thinks is that they're going to give it to a hobbit to go off into the wilderness.
Yeah.
Basically, eventually by himself. And it's just complete lack of imagination and lack of foresight. And he doesn't even put any guards in front of the Cracks of Doom.
No,
And that's why, you know, I mean,
because people will use it and not destroy it. He doesn't
mm,
understand that. And it's cool. And yeah, like you said, and this is the reason why not somebody like Glorfindel or the Eagles. I mean, oh my God, or these videos on why didn't take the Eagles the ring to Mordor. I'm going to want to make fun of it. But no, just kidding. This is why none of them carried the ring, because
mm,
this is what he thought would happen and
mm.
who he would look for. And he literally didn't know where the Shire is. The ring wraiths didn't know whether, like, they didn't think the Hobbit's important enough for this story.
No, no one did. No, not even the elves did, actually. Pretty much Gandalf was the only body that took the hobbits
Yeah.
seriously. Is it? How does he put it? At one point, he says,
Strider, in a way, Strider. Why did they always? I mean, yes, it was their duty because it was, the former Anorian kingdom, and they protected the borders still. But
mm,
in a way, I don't know. I always felt like he was so understanding of the hobbits and always wanted to take care of the hobbits. I think in a way Aragorn knew this as well because he was humbled by his own history, right? Like he is from the race of men that was the most
I
powerful.
think the Dunedain Rangers protected a larger area than just the Shire. I think they
Yes,
were also protecting the
Mordor.
Grey
Yeah,
Lands
I know,
and
I know,
everybody else. But
I know.
um,
But he believed in the hobbits can actually do it, and I do think a lot of the
yeah,
others were just like, what?
well, he'd met Bilbo, hadn't he? So that was why.
He met Bilbo, and I really do think, I mean, there's this story, that the hobbits, I don't know if it's just a legendary thing, but that the hobbits sent archers in the wars and they helped their king because the Numenorians or the Anorian kingdom, the Anorian kings were their kings for a while. And as long as that kingdom existed, and they helped in the wars and whatnot. So he knew they're not that useless.
No, and Sauron didn't. You know, to bring it back to Sauron, Sauron didn't have that element of kind of imagination or
Yeah.
respect for the humble kind of the smallest of his enemies.
Yeah,
He considered them irrelevant, and
exactly.
that again fits the MO of his old boss, because
Mhm.
Melkor also didn't take men seriously for a very long time,
Yeah,
did he?
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And what I find fascinating talking about this is, and maybe we can wrap it up here because this is a really cool thought I always had. Like Sauron didn't understand that, but also a point why the hobbits took the ring and it was so somebody like Sam could withstand it is because the hobbits don't care for the dealings of the world. Why did they never had a king? Because they were content with, like having a time and what. I mean, they had forms of kings,
mm,
but not really. And they never had that power and aspiration for more in them. They never had.
no.
Most of them, and this is how the Shire is portrayed, so you have literally two complete opposites, like Sauron not being able to imagine somebody does not want power, and then literally that life form exists in the hobbits who also don't think the real evil exists, because Frodo would never have gone on the journey. Remember the first scenes of The Hobbit when Gandalf tells Frodo about, about the ring and about Sauron, and he kind of knew a few things, but not really. And Sam, like, oh my God, elves, and they are so. But imagine that, and think of the Hobbits didn't have this imagination of there is this really, really bad evil in the world that literally will burn the whole world and also the Shire. This is
Mm.
they didn't think about it.
They had the faintest idea about it. Like they did have like this kind of like it was almost like folklore to them. It was like a distant
Yes,
legend of a distant kingdom of Mordor that existed somewhere.
yeah, but it was
They
more
didn't.
raw and it was not real
Yeah.
to them. And I do think this is why it was easier for the hobbits. If you would have taken an elf or a human, they would be afraid of Sauron. But the hobbits in the beginning, and this is exactly how they're portrayed, they're like, la 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 la, I'm going to sing, I'm going on an adventure. And it's easier,
They were more worried about the old forest being next door than anything else.
And if you're not, if you don't know that much about the world, it's easier to do these things than when you know everything and you know who the real baddie is and what he can do. It's easier if you don't know that to go on this adventure. This is how I always felt. I don't know. This is how I felt, that you literally have complete opposites, and it's literally the matching missing piece on both sides, and that's so cool. And this is why it's the hobbits who, well, in the end, it's not the hobbits who destroyed the ring, but that's
if you think about the races of the free peoples in the Third Age, it's kind of almost touched on this at the beginning of this chat, actually. If you think about them, the characters that we meet in the story of the Lord of the Rings, the closest analog that we meet to Sauron is probably Denethor, really, because he also sees a lot, and we have the whole idea of the Eye of Sauron, and Denethor has his Palantir, which is kind of the closest thing that we see to that, apart from Saruman. But Saruman is also kind of like a mini Dark Lord. He's not a goodie, is he? He's not a good guy. So Denethor also is not a battlefield general. He's somebody who stays behind enemy lines, at least in his later years. Like, we know him as a warrior from his younger days, but he
still in his
in recent years he doesn't actually fight, does he? Which is again similar. So he kind of almost does some of the same things as Sauron in terms of what is his behavior.
And the order aspect, and the being the good king, and thinking, I'm a steward, that's fine. We don't need you, Aragorn. We're fine. It's very similar.
I don't know if you saw this, but I saw a tweet earlier. You just made me think of it, about the stewards. Somebody in the US has filed a lawsuit.
I saw that.
A lawsuit recently to basically sue the Biden administration to say that they're not. Maybe we shouldn't get too political here, but to say that they're not qualified, or they're not
take over
power of the the US executive branch, and that they've cited the Lord of the Rings and the House of Stewards as a kind of alternative intermediate government, and they're suggesting the Trump administration to take over as stewards. Which I just love, the parallel of Trump and Denethor that's implied in that is so stupid.
Well, maybe he likes tomatoes. Who knows? Well, good. So do you have anything more on Sauron?
What do you find interesting about the iconography of the eye that we see with Sauron? It's very much a Third Age thing. It's it's not really alluded to in the Silmarillion at all. Even in the Akalabeth, which is obviously, I think, probably mostly written after the Lord of the Rings. I think I'm right in saying that. Anyway, I mean, its roots are before the Lord of the Rings, of course. But yeah, what do you think about that as a kind of element of the mythological aspect of Sauron? And we see it twice in the Lord of the Rings.
What mythology is behind the eye? The evil eye?
Yeah, I mean, what does it mean? What does it mean that he has an eye? What does it say about him? I suppose I'm asking.
No, but
is that also that kind of that desire to dominate and to have order, because he's overseeing things? Is that
big? I'm just saying, Big Brother watching you, like literally. I mean, look at Orwell. What did Orwell write? Right. So that's how I. That was the only thing that was left, but that's the most important thing. Well, then the voice was always important, his voice, because that's how he persuaded people, and that was literally taken away from him, right? So, because the eye couldn't do anything, it could put fear in, because it sees you, right? So it puts the fear into the people's heart. So I'm still here, but the voice is gone.
Yeah, Frodo Frodo, when he's on the slopes of Mount Doom, he sees Barad-dûr as the clouds part for a second in the mist. And he sees Barad-dûr from a distance, and he sees. I mean, the way I read that scene is that he sees Sauron looking out of a window, and he sees that kind of.
Yeah.
And he's pierced by it and struck by it, and it's actually very similar to a concept that's in the Book of Lost Tales, which is the spell of bottomless dread. I think it is, or is that right? I think that's right. Probably been a while since you've read that, I guess, but it's very similar concept. It's something that kind of came back again.
I just to finish up the voice and eye thingy, and this is, I do think, why he had Sauron, because what is Sauron known for? His voice. And to convince people to like, so he kind of got his voice back with Saruman, and he was still the eye. So never really thought, but then I'm not a third age person.
Yeah. I mean, I see it. Obviously, I see it as, I've kind of implied what I see in it, which is what you said, which I kind of led you towards, which was that it's kind of the applicability that I see in it is that dictatorial kind of staple of overseeing everything, like you said, Big Brother.
Yeah.
I mean, we should maybe say for people who have somehow made it to the end of this and have only seen the movies, like the Eye of Sauron isn't actually literally a giant fireball, like we see in the movies. That's like a giant CCTV camera that's looking over Mordor. It's more of a kind of spiritual eye that exists in the spiritual realm, but.
Everything is more spiritual than depicted in movies, but then again, you need something visual. You can't just
creepy, isn't it?
Yeah, like, I'm perfectly fine with the description, and I do think that literally people listening to this and may probably have not read the Silmarillion. I think they maybe just like us talking about stuff or whatever, or like, what is this weird woman talking about? I don't know, but people read the Silmarillion. It's so good. If you want to know more about Sauron, read it. There's a lot, and also in all the other like the unfinished tales. There are lots of, and I can only recommend, and I'll have an amazing guest in 2 weeks' time. It's Matt from the Dark Lords, and this is also a story about Sauron in a way. This is the story of Aldarion and Earendis, and Sauron plays, or the Shadow plays, an important role here. Yeah. So
they don't know that it's Sauron at that point in the storyline, do they?
It's a shadow falling over Numnor, and again, Tolkien was a linguist. He literally could have named anything, but he said shadow, and Sauron is the shadow. So okay. Dan, to round this up, it was so cool. I loved this little baddie talk, and we will find a goodie to talk about. If Fingolfin is pretty Finarf, who do you think of? Did we talk about Fingolfin? No, we didn't.
We haven't done Fingolfin yet. No. Yeah, let's do Fingolfin then.
Or Finrod, whatever.
Yeah, I said Finrod earlier on. So I'd like to do him maybe, but not really known for warriorness, is he? I think Fingolfin's a better fit.
And
who cares?
And then what is going on your channel? Tell us.
So I am still doing content on the Silmarillion. I'm going through the Quenta Silmarillion chapter by chapter. My next chapter will be chapter 13, which we're starting to get back to the point where I'm getting dialogue again. So I've got some wicked voice actors lined up. I've got some really cool ones.
You spoiled somebody?
Okay, yeah. So the next chapter, it has got dialogue from you're going to pick me up on my pronunciation, even though I know I'm right. Maedhros, which, as I told you, that is how Christopher Lee pronounces it in the Children of Húrin audiobook. So yeah, Maedhros, and So I haven't got the Mythros dialogue through yet from the voice actor. Hopefully he sees this and records it for me. But we've also got Thingol. The first dialogue from Thingol comes up in the next chapter, and I've got Yoyston. I've got Yoyston from Men of the West doing Thingol, and I emailed him about it, and he emailed me back all of the dialogue from all of the literally. He's got the most dialogue out of everybody that I've got coming up. He dies in chapter 22, Thingol, and I'm on chapter 13 right now. And Yoyston emailed me back all of the dialogue like 4 hours later. I love that guy.
He's very efficient.
Yeah,
must be German.
Oh, he wishes.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, I've got him coming up, and I've got more voice actors lined up for more parts. I'm not going to tease it now, but stay tuned for all of that. And then I've started a series on the story of Numenor. So I've done one video on that. I'm going to next cover Elros Tar Miniatur, the twin brother of Elrond, and then I'm going to go through the whole storyline, and bit by bit I'm going to break it down, tell you about all the main rulers and all the rulers that come in between the main ones and the storyline of the downfall. And then I'm doing a podcast now. So like this, I've had you on the channel twice, as I've said earlier. But I'm also hoping to film with Cliff, aka Quickbeam from the One Ring, at the weekend, which you'll be co-hosting for. And I'll have many more guests in the future. So
cool.
That's what's going on with me.
Yay. And it just, for me, an update. I'm doing this Elven houses thingy. I just dropped the Vanya. I can link that down below, which is, I really like the topic, because I was like, oh my God, they're literally so boring. Is there anything about them even, like, except 2 sentences? But no, I found out a little bit. Obviously, as I always do, I speculated a lot and brought my own thoughts into it. So again, I say that in the beginning of the video, though, it's not canon. Not everything I say in there is canon, but yeah, I still had fun, and it's really cool. And next one that will drop next Wednesday will be about the Noldor. And the third one about the Teleri the Wednesday after. So the plan is to drop a low video every Wednesday and to have a podcast like this every Saturday. So it should be Saturday when this drops. And excited. I also have a few fun guests coming up, and a lot of content in 2021. And I'm excited, and I want to say thank you to everybody. I think both of us reached a mini goal, and we see like people are interacting with our channels and kind of like what we do. We don't have that many crazy negative comments, except us mispronouncing stuff, like having different world views or understanding. But understanding Tolkien is wherever you're from. What is your backstory? What is your education? What is your heritage? I obviously understand it completely different than somebody who is from Kentucky in America. Like, it's a complete, and that's a good thing, because Tolkien never it is like this 100%. Obviously, sometimes he does, but I do think a lot is interpretation, and that's a beautiful thing and a good thing, and I just want to remind everybody in the comment section about that.
I talked earlier on about something I've never talked about before, which is my theological beliefs, or lack of, really, which I've never talked about that before. But one thing Tolkien has always given me is an understanding of the religious mindset, or at least something closer to it than I get from most other writers, and I really appreciate that.
And he makes religious topics livable, approachable, and real, because it's
and not just that, but I see the attraction in it. I can see the attraction in it, and I don't I don't
It
get
has a
that.
good story with
I
it.
don't get
Yeah.
that from almost anywhere else.
No, and that's the thing. It's not in your face. You have to believe this, or it has to be like this. No, he doesn't. Again, I just can say Turin Turamba, like that. There could have been so, he could have written this story completely different and make him a hero. He didn't. He's a tragic hero. He failed. Like all this is in there, and this is why I really love the way, yes, he was Catholic, yes, he was religious, yes, these are topics, but what is religion based on? What are many religions based on experiences, on topics, on myths? This is just a retelling of things that happened or might have happened or are important to people, written down. Again, I'm not a religious person myself, not really. I grew up with two religions, with the Christian and the Jewish faith, which in a way are very similar, but then also very different. And I find it super cool how he does it. And look, it's so many years later, 80, 90 years later, and it's still up to date. And that's a good story.
It's timeless.
Cool.
Okay,
Sauron.
so I'm going to say one more thing. I'm going to say one more thing, which is everybody, please like the video if you're still watching, and comment below and tell us what you liked about our discussion, and also subscribe to Voice of Geekdom.
Yeah, I'll link everything. And people, yes, you can also make suggestions, obviously, in the comment section. I do read the comments, and I ignore the bad comments. I just pretend I don't read them. And suggest what you want in this format. What would you be interested in? We're doing goodies and baddies right now. We could do more. We could do other stuff. Make a suggestion. I'm kind of open. I mean, I have ideas, but Cool. Thank you very much. It was a very good chat. Oh my God, it's almost 2 hours. I'm tired. Peace out. Bye-bye, my lovelies.
Bye, lovelies.